The morning sun lingered gently over the small coastal town, brushing its light across the quiet streets where Anna Whitfield now lived. To her neighbors, she was simply Anna, the woman who jogged by the pier before sunrise, who smiled softly when greeting the grocer, who carried herself with a quiet dignity that drew both curiosity and respect. Yet beneath the surface, within the rhythm of her measured steps and the steel in her gaze, lived the memory of years in uniform, years defined by duty, grit, and unspoken sacrifice. Anna had once been an officer in the United States Navy. Her hands, now steady as they buttoned a simple jacket, had once guided shipboard radios in the roar of storm-tossed seas and gripped the edge of bulkheads during emergency drills when the world seemed to tilt sideways. The cadence of boots on steel decks, the endless hum of engines, and the sharp call of orders had been the soundtrack of her youth. Even now, when she closed her eyes in moments of stillness, she could still hear the faint, distant echo of that life. It was a sound that never truly left her, as though etched into the marrow of her bones. But life had changed. She no longer wore the crisp uniform that bore her nameplate, no longer saluted the flag at dawn as the horizon burned with first light. Instead, she was learning to navigate a world that expected her to be softer, quieter, less carved by the storms she had endured. Civilian life, for all its peace, often felt like a battlefield of its own, subtler, yes, but heavy in its own way. The stillness of it sometimes pressed on her chest, reminding her of what was gone, of what she carried silently inside. This day, like many others, began in the diner on Main Street. The clinking of silverware, the warm smell of coffee, and the low hum of morning chatter filled the air. Anna took her usual seat by the window, her back instinctively straight, her posture quietly alert even in this ordinary setting. She had chosen the seat carefully on her first visit. It gave her a clear line of sight to the door, an old habit she no longer questioned. The waitress, a kind woman with tired eyes, poured her a cup of black coffee without asking. "Rough morning?" she asked softly. Anna's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Just a long run," she replied, her voice even, carrying the warmth of gratitude though her eyes betrayed the ever-present distance that clung to her. Around her, the diner breathed with life. The laughter of friends sharing pancakes, the scrape of a chair, the sun slanting through blinds in golden stripes. Yet Anna never quite let herself fully sink into it. Part of her remained tethered to vigilance, to that training that once saved lives when seconds mattered. It was during these quiet moments that memories often returned. She remembered nights at sea when the horizon vanished into blackness and the stars scattered above like 1,000 silent witnesses. She remembered the roar of helicopters lifting off the deck, their blades churning the air so fiercely it rattled her chest. She remembered the weight of responsibility, the faces of those she led, the sobering truth that each decision could tip the balance between life and death. And she remembered, most painfully, the losses, the ones she could not save, the ones whose absence she carried like unspoken scars. The bell above the diner door jingled, shaking her from reverie. 3 men walked in, their laughter loud, their presence sharp against the softer rhythm of the room. Anna's gaze flicked to them out of habit, her awareness sharpening. She did not yet know that within minutes, this ordinary morning would fracture into something raw and violent, something that would remind her and everyone watching that strength is not always visible until it is tested. For now, though, she sipped her coffee, letting the heat anchor her in the present. Her fingers, slender but strong, wrapped around the ceramic cup as though it were a tether to calmness. She watched the light play against the surface of the coffee, its ripples steadying as her hand stilled. She thought about how far she had come, not only through deployments and years of service, but through the invisible war of returning home. The silence of civilian life had not come easily. There had been nights when sleep felt like a stranger, when the dark corners of memory pressed too close. There had been mornings when the weight of transition seemed unbearable. But she endured. She endured because endurance had been written into her from the very first day she swore her oath, and because resilience, for her, was not a choice but a way of being. And in this resilience, there was beauty. Anna did not see herself as remarkable. She did not walk with the pride of someone demanding recognition. Instead, she moved with the quiet grace of someone who understood fragility and strength in equal measure, someone who knew that surviving and healing were both acts of courage. At the corner of the diner, a child dropped a fork. The sharp clatter startled his mother, but Anna simply bent slightly, catching the boy's wide eyes with a calm smile before he could cry. There was something in her gaze, firm yet gentle, that stilled him, and the moment passed. His mother mouthed a soft thank you, and Anna nodded, returning to her coffee. Small moments of connection like this reminded her that service didn't end with the uniform. It lived on in how she carried herself, in how she met the world with both vigilance and kindness. She closed her eyes briefly, letting the sounds of the diner fold around her like waves. For a moment, she felt at peace, not because her past was gone, but because she was learning to weave it into who she was becoming. The war within her had not ended, but she was learning, slowly, that peace could be found in fragments, in morning light, in black coffee, in the soft laughter of strangers. Outside, the sun climbed higher, spilling its warmth through the window. Anna breathed deeply, steady, resolute. Life had remade her many times, and it would again. What mattered was not the battles she had fought but the quiet courage with which she carried them now. The laughter of the three men swelled through the diner like an unwelcome intrusion, sharp and careless against the softer hum of morning life. Their voices carried, each word steeped in the arrogance of those who had never been taught restraint. Anna's eyes flicked toward them, not in judgment, but with the steady awareness of someone who had spent years trained to read a room, to measure risk in the tilt of a posture, the cadence of a tone. She returned her gaze to the window, though her senses stayed alert. The cup of coffee was warm against her hands, grounding her. Still, the edge of unease threaded through her chest, not fear, but recognition. She had seen men like them before, in bars near bases overseas, in tense villages where the wrong gesture could spark chaos. The uniform may have been gone, but her instincts had not softened. The men claimed a booth in the back corner, their voices too loud, their gestures careless. A chair scraped harshly against the floor. A burst of laughter followed, brittle and jagged, cutting into the diner's gentle rhythm. Some patrons glanced up and then quickly backed down, the way civilians often did, hoping noise would pass without escalation. Anna, however, knew better than to rely on hope. She measured the air, listening to the tones that sharpened beneath the surface of their laughter. Her thoughts drifted, unbidden, to another kind of noise, the pounding of rotor blades during a night evacuation, the shouts of her unit as orders were barked through the storm of chaos. She remembered standing her ground then, holding her radio against the surge of wind and dust, her voice calm as she relayed coordinates. Fear had been present, yes, but it had never ruled her. That same steady composure rose in her now, a quiet reminder that vigilance was not paranoia but preparation. Minutes passed. Plates clattered from the kitchen, coffee poured into cups, silverware chimed against ceramic. But the men's voices grew heavier, words slurred with something darker than simple humor. Anna did not catch every phrase, but the tone was unmistakable. The way one of them leaned too close to the waitress, his hand brushing the edge of her tray. The forced laugh that followed was brittle, and Anna saw the woman's shoulders tense as she hurried away. Anna's jaw tightened. Her training taught her to assess, to wait, to measure the moment before action. Yet her humanity reminded her of every time she had witnessed power misused, every time someone vulnerable had been cornered. The echo of those moments sat heavy in her chest. She lowered her eyes to her coffee, as if studying the steam rising from it. In truth, she was breathing slow, measured, deliberate. She had learned long ago that calm was not the absence of emotion, but the choice to steady it, to channel it. The men's laughter suddenly shifted into words directed her way. Anna felt it more than heard it at first, the sharp angle of a glance, the smirk curving into something invasive. She turned her head slightly, her expression neutral, her body still. "Hey, military girl," One of them called out, his voice a blend of mockery and challenge. She didn't answer. Her silence was not submission, it was composure, a deliberate refusal to feed the spark. But the air in the diner tightened, like a rope pulled taut. Around them, conversations faltered. Forks hovered above plates. A child's laughter stilled mid-breath. The room seemed to hold itself in a fragile pause. Anna took in every detail, the way one man shifted forward, his elbows pressing onto the table as though preparing to rise, the twitch in another's jaw, the sudden, uneasy glance of the waitress lingering by the counter. These were signs she had been trained to read, signs of escalation, signs of a storm gathering. Her memories pressed forward again, unbidden. A memory of standing in a foreign street at dusk, a crowd swelling too quickly, voices rising too sharply. She remembered the chill of realizing that words could unravel into violence in seconds. Back then, she had relied on her team. Here, she was alone. Yet the stillness inside her was the same. Anna's fingers traced the rim of her coffee cup. Her breathing remained steady, though her muscles shifted imperceptibly beneath her jacket, preparing. She did not seek confrontation, but neither would she shrink from it. Service had etched something into her very being, the refusal to yield when others needed strength. The men's laughter broke again, louder now, as one of them rose from his seat. The scrape of his chair seemed to echo louder than it should have, pulling every eye in the diner. He took a step toward her, casual in appearance, but weighted with intent. Anna looked up. Her gaze met his without flinching, steady, calm, unblinking. It was the gaze of someone who had stood in storms far greater than this, someone who knew what it meant to be tested. In that moment, though no one else could see it, the balance shifted. He faltered, just for a breath, confronted not with fear but with a quiet, immovable strength. The silence in the diner deepened. The waitress gripped the edge of her tray. The child at the corner booth leaned into his mother. Anna remained still, her posture unchanging, her expression composed. The man sneered, as if to mask his hesitation, and another from the booth jeered to cover the silence. The moment stretched, taut as a wire, the next breath poised to snap it. Anna's hand left her coffee cup. Her movements were unhurried, deliberate. She shifted her chair slightly, grounding her feet on the tiled floor. She was ready, not for a fight she sought, but for one she would not back away from. And somewhere, beneath the tension, she felt it, that same steadiness she had known on ship decks and foreign soil. The struggle was not new. It was only wearing a different face. The diner held its breath. Forks hovered midair, conversation stilled. Even the hiss of the coffee machine seemed distant. The man's shadow stretched across the floor toward Anna as he closed the space between them. His smirk tried to mask unease, but his swagger carried menace, a kind of challenge that demanded an answer. Anna rose slowly, her chair scraping lightly against the tiled floor. She moved without rush, without showmanship, as if simply standing to greet the morning sun. Yet there was weight in the act, a quiet shift that those watching could feel more than see. Her eyes lifted to meet his, calm and unyielding. There was no fire in them, no spark of anger. Only the still, steady composure of someone who had walked through storms and returned. For an instant, the man faltered, but bravado urged him forward. "You think you're tough?" he jeered, leaning too close. His breath carried the stale scent of beer, though it was barely past breakfast. Anna didn't answer. Words were wasted here. Instead, she shifted her weight, grounding herself in the simple posture she had repeated thousands of times during training. Her shoulders lowered, her stance balanced, her hands loose but ready. She could hear her instructor's voices echoing from long ago, steady, centered, calm. When his hand reached toward her shoulder, the air cracked open. Anna moved with precision, not force. Her hand caught his wrist midair, her grip iron, yet controlled. In a breath, she twisted, redirecting his momentum, and he stumbled forward with a grunt of surprise. Gasps rippled through the diner, the sound of plates rattling as people leaned back. The second man lurched to his feet, anger flushing his face. He lunged, clumsy and reckless, and Anna stepped aside, guiding his momentum as though she had seen it 100 times before. His shoulder struck the edge of a table with a crash, silverware scattering across the floor like metallic rain. The third man hesitated. He saw the steadiness in her eyes, the strength carried in her every movement. But pride, sharp and heavy, drove him forward anyway. He swung clumsily, an arc wide enough to announce itself long before it reached her. Anna's body moved like water, fluid, inevitable. She ducked, her hand rising to strike the center of his chest with controlled force. He staggered backward, air leaving his lungs in a wheeze. It had taken less than 15 seconds. Silence followed, thick and trembling. The only sounds were the heavy breathing of the men, the soft scrape of chairs as people shifted, uncertain, and the faint rattle of the blinds against the window where sunlight spilled in. Anna stood in the center of it all, her breath calm, her posture steady. She had not raised her voice. She had not sought spectacle. She had simply acted, measured, controlled, protective. The waitress stood frozen by the counter, her tray pressed tightly against her chest. When Anna's gaze met hers, the woman's shoulders softened, relief flickering in her eyes. A mother at the corner booth held her child close, her own eyes wide but filled not with fear, but awe. The men, humiliated, muttered curses under their breath as they stumbled toward the door, their bravado shattered like glass on tile. None dared look back. The bell above the door jingled weakly as they pushed out into the street, their departure leaving the diner trembling in the silence they abandoned. For a long moment no one moved. Then, slowly, the hum of life began to return. Someone exhaled audibly. A fork clinked against a plate. The child whispered, "Wow," in a voice so soft it carried farther than expected. Anna returned to her seat, as if nothing had happened. She lifted her cup of coffee, though it had cooled, and took a measured sip. Her hands did not shake. Her breathing did not waver. Yet inside, she felt the familiar weight settle, a reminder that strength often came at a cost, that each confrontation stirred echoes of older battles fought in darker places. Still, she sat with grace, her gaze drifting again toward the window where sunlight poured over the street outside. She did not bask in triumph. She did not revel in power. Instead, she simply breathed, letting the quiet return. The waitress approached, hesitant at first, then steadier. She set a fresh cup of coffee before Anna, her hand trembling slightly as she placed it down. "On the house," she whispered, her voice threaded with gratitude. Anna inclined her head in acknowledgement, a soft smile touching her lips. She had no need for thanks, yet she accepted the gesture with quiet dignity. Around her, the diner slowly exhaled. Conversations resumed in hushed tones, some glances lingering her way, others quickly turning aside as if to guard the sacredness of what they had witnessed. Anna sipped the fresh coffee. Its warmth settled through her, grounding her again. She knew this was not the last time her strength would be tested, not the last time she would stand when standing mattered. But she also knew that strength, true strength, was not in the fight itself. It was in the restraint, the calm, the choice to protect without destruction. Outside, the day carried on. Cars passed, sunlight shifted. The world remained unaware of the quiet storm that had just passed through a small-town diner. But inside, those who had been present would not forget. They would remember the woman who stood with calm in the face of arrogance, who carried herself with the quiet gravity of someone who had once worn a uniform and who, even without it, remained a guardian of dignity. And Anna, with her coffee in hand and her gaze steady on the light beyond the glass, allowed herself a small, quiet breath of peace. The diner gradually returned to life, though its rhythm felt altered, softened by what had just transpired. People spoke again, though more quietly, their words carrying a weight of respect rather than chatter. Every so often, a pair of eyes lingered on Anna, not with fear but with recognition, a silent acknowledgement of the steadiness she had shown. Anna herself did not seek their gazes. She finished her coffee with unhurried patience, as though the scene had not unsettled her, though deep inside, she felt its echoes. Every confrontation carried memory, and memory, she knew, was never light. Still, she breathed evenly, her posture calm, her presence like an anchor in the shifting current of the room. When she finally stood, slipping her jacket around her shoulders, the waitress stepped forward. Her voice trembled slightly, but it held sincerity. "Thank you," she said, almost in a whisper. Anna's eyes softened. She placed a hand briefly on the woman's arm, her touch firm yet gentle. "Take care of yourself," she replied simply. It was not just reassurance, it was a promise that strength lived quietly in ordinary people, too. Then she left, the bell above the door chiming softly as she stepped into the bright wash of midday sun. Outside, the world moved on unknowing. Cars drifted past, a dog barked in the distance, the sea wind carried salt and warmth through the air. Anna walked with unhurried steps, her boots clicking lightly against the pavement. Each sound tethered her back to the present, each breath reminding her that she was not defined by the battles, but by the person she continued to become after them. Her path took her to the pier, where gulls circled above and the tide pulled steadily against the pilings. She paused there, leaning on the worn wooden railing. The horizon stretched endlessly before her, sky and sea blending in a line of shifting silver and blue. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the wind wash over her face, carrying with it the distant echo of places she had once known. Deck plates beneath her boots, the salt spray of a storm, the far-off thrum of engines beneath steel. Memories pressed close, but she did not resist them. Instead, she allowed them space, acknowledging each one with the same quiet composure she had shown in the diner. She thought of the men and women she had served alongside, their laughter in rare moments of calm, their courage when fear threatened to consume, their silences that spoke volumes. Some had come home. Some had not. She carried them all. Her hands rested on the railing, the wood rough against her palms. She studied them, the small scars, the strength that lingered in their lines. Once, these hands had directed signals under fire, had steadied trembling shoulders of younger sailors, had folded flags with reverence and sorrow. Now, they held only the salt-stained wood of a pier railing, yet they were no less purposeful. Service did not end with the uniform. It lived on in every choice, in every act of quiet courage. She exhaled slowly, and in that breath she felt something shift, not the weight lifting entirely, but the burden finding its place. She was learning, day by day, to weave her past into her present without letting it consume her. The strength she carried was not just for herself but for others, for the waitress whose shoulders had tensed in fear, for the child whose wide eyes had searched for reassurance, for anyone who needed to be reminded that there were still guardians in this world. Anna turned from the sea, her gaze steady, her steps sure. She walked back into town, not as a figure of spectacle but as herself, a woman who had endured, who continued to endure, who moved forward with quiet dignity. As she passed the grocery store, an older man standing by the doorway gave her a nod, the kind given by someone who had seen enough to recognize strength without words. She returned it with a faint smile, a simple exchange that spoke of shared understanding. Life stretched on in small, ordinary moments, the rustle of leaves in the breeze, the murmur of conversations drifting from shop fronts, the scent of bread cooling in the bakery. Anna let them all in, each sensory detail grounding her in the world she now inhabited, reminding her that resilience was not just about surviving storms, but about finding beauty again after they passed. By the time evening settled, she sat on her porch with a cup of tea, the sky painted in soft hues of amber and violet. The quiet wrapped around her like a gentle cloak. She thought again of the diner, of the faces she had seen there, fear giving way to awe, unease dissolving into relief. She hoped they would carry something from that moment, not of violence, but of the calm strength that met it. She lifted her cup, the warmth seeping into her palms. The horizon dimmed into twilight, stars beginning to prick the sky, one by one. And she thought of the countless nights at sea, when those same stars had guided her. Tonight, they did again, not across oceans, but across the journey of who she was becoming. Anna breathed deeply, the air cool, the silence steady. Her life was not simple, nor was it free of struggle. But it was hers, shaped by service, tempered by loss, strengthened by resilience. And in that truth, there was peace. She closed her eyes, letting the last light fade. Tomorrow would come, with its own weight and its own grace. And she would rise to meet it, as she always had, quietly, steadily, with a strength born not of force but of love. The morning came softly, wrapped in a pale mist that drifted across the fields beyond Anna's porch. She sat with her hands around a mug of coffee, listening to the faint hum of insects and the low murmur of waking birds. The quiet was deep, but within it was a pulse of life, as if the earth itself was reminding her that even silence held its own kind of song. She had slept little, though not restlessly. Sleep had come in intervals, broken by dreams she did not resist nor cling to. In them, she saw familiar faces, some smiling, some shadowed, all etched into her memory like carvings in stone. When the dawn broke, she rose with it, moving into the day not as one burdened, but as one carrying her past with care. Anna stepped off the porch and followed the small dirt road that led past her house. The air was damp and cool, heavy with the scent of grass still beaded with dew. Each step felt grounded, her boots pressing gently into the earth. She liked the rhythm of walking, how it gave her space to breathe, to listen, to let her thoughts find their shape without hurry. As she walked, she passed the fence line where a neighbor's horse grazed lazily, its dark coat glistening in the thin light. She paused for a moment, reaching her hand over the rails. The animal lifted its head, large eyes calm and unhurried. Anna let her fingers brush its muzzle, steady and tender. It was a small connection, wordless but grounding. She whispered a soft greeting before continuing down the road. The path curved toward the town, where the scent of baking bread drifted faintly on the breeze. The streets were beginning to stir, shopkeepers rolling up shutters, children tugging at their parents' hands, cars easing into the day's rhythm. Anna walked through it quietly, blending into the flow of ordinary life. Yet heads turned as she passed, not with spectacle, but with the quiet recognition of someone whose presence lingered in memory. She carried herself with calm composure, her steps unhurried, her gaze steady. It was not pride that shaped her posture, but a dignity forged in years of learning how to stand, how to move, how to hold steady even when the ground shook beneath her. People sensed it, even if they could not name it. Near the square, an old man sat on a bench beneath a broad oak, a cane resting across his knees. His eyes followed Anna as she approached, and when she drew near, he lifted his hand in a small gesture. She slowed, stepping toward him. "Morning," he said, his voice carrying the rasp of years. "Morning," Anna replied gently. He studied her for a moment, his gaze not unkind. "You've seen things," he said simply, as though naming a truth rather than asking a question. Anna inclined her head. "I have." He nodded, as if satisfied. "So have I." He tapped the cane lightly on the ground, his eyes clouded yet sharp in their own way. Different wars, same weight. For a moment, silence stretched between them, filled with understanding. No details were spoken, no stories exchanged. They did not need to be. The recognition alone was enough, a bridge between two lives shaped by different battles, yet threaded with the same resilience. Anna placed her hand lightly on the bench, a brief gesture of respect. "Take care," she said softly, then moved on, her steps carrying her back into the flow of the day. By afternoon, she returned home. The sun was higher now, burning off the mist, casting sharp shadows across the porch. She poured herself a glass of water and sat, her body still, her mind wandering through the morning. She thought of the horse's calm eyes, the old man's rasping voice, the quiet nods of strangers in town. Each moment was small, yet each carried meaning, threads weaving into a tapestry of connection. As the hours passed, she found herself drawn to the small garden beside her house. She knelt in the soil, her hands steady as she tended to the plants, pulling weeds, pressing new seeds into the earth, smoothing the dirt with gentle care. The scent of soil clung to her fingers, grounding her, reminding her that life did not need to be monumental to matter. Growth was slow, patient, steady. Like healing. The sun dipped lower, and the sky shifted into shades of amber. Anna rose, brushing the dirt from her hands. She stood for a long moment, looking at the horizon, her face lit with the last glow of day. A quiet thought moved through her. She was not finished, not by far. There were still roads ahead, still mornings to greet, still people to stand beside, quietly, when they needed it. As twilight settled, she stepped back onto the porch, the wood warm beneath her boots. She lit the small lantern that hung by the door, its glow spilling softly into the darkening air. The world quieted again, the sounds of night rising, crickets, distant owls, the hum of unseen life. Anna breathed in deeply, the night cool against her skin. She felt the weight of her past, but she felt its balance too, the way it had carved her into someone who could walk steadily, who could witness both sorrow and beauty without flinching. Her life was not an ending but a long road, unfolding one step at a time. And as she stood in the gentle light of her lantern, with the stars beginning their slow rise above, Anna felt ready for it. Whatever tomorrow might bring, she would meet it with the same quiet strength that had carried her this far. The town hall smelled faintly of old wood and polish, the kind of scent that carried memory in it. Anna stepped through its wide double doors quietly, her shoulders squared yet relaxed. The evening sun slanted through high windows, painting soft gold across the worn floorboards. Rows of folding chairs had been arranged in neat lines, some already filled with neighbors she recognized. She had not planned to attend at first. Meetings like these, gatherings of voices, plans, and worries, were not where she felt most at home. But a friend had stopped by the day before, her expression earnest. "They want someone to speak about resilience," she had said. "About strength in hard times. You know those words better than most." So here she was, standing at the edge of the room, her presence unassuming but steady. Conversations hummed around her, the shuffle of papers, the clink of water glasses, the low murmur of people settling into their seats. When her name was called, Anna rose. The walk to the front was quiet, each step echoing softly against the hall's wooden bones. She stood behind the modest podium, her hands resting lightly on its edge. For a moment, she looked at the crowd, not with command, but with a gentle attentiveness. She saw faces lined by work and weather, eyes carrying stories of their own. Her voice, when it came, was calm and low. "Life asks more of us than we expect," she began. "It gives us moments that test what we think we can endure. Sometimes those moments come far from home, and sometimes they find us here, in the places we thought were safe." The room stilled. A chair creaked quietly, then silence folded around her words. "I don't stand here with answers," Anna continued, her tone almost tender. "What I have is the memory of nights when I thought the dawn might not come. What I have are scars, not just on skin, but in places no one sees. But I also have the truth that we are stronger than we believe, especially when we stand together." Her hands shifted slightly on the podium, her fingers curling against the grain of the wood. She spoke of resilience not as something heroic, but as something ordinary, woven into tending gardens, raising children, holding neighbors through grief. She spoke of the quiet courage it took to face loneliness, or to ask for help when pride whispered otherwise. She did not mention her service directly, nor the battles she had fought abroad. Instead, she let her words carry the shape of those experiences, softened and human, like light filtered through fabric. When she finished, the hall remained quiet for a moment. Then, slowly, hands came together, not in loud applause, but in steady, grateful clapping that carried warmth rather than spectacle. Anna inclined her head slightly, acknowledging the gesture before stepping back into the crowd. Later, as she walked home beneath the deepening twilight, she felt the weight of the evening settling within her, not heavy, but full. She thought of the old man on the bench, of the horse's calm eyes, of the faces in the hall. Each encounter was small, yet each ripple reached further than she could measure. Her boots struck softly against the road, the air cooling with the rise of night. Crickets hummed from the fields, and a faint breeze brushed against her cheek. She found herself slowing her steps, letting the world around her speak its quiet truths. At home, she lit the lantern on the porch, its glow steady against the dark. She sat for a while, the wooden chair creaking gently beneath her. Her thoughts drifted back to the words she had spoken and to the silence that had followed them. She wondered if someone in the hall had carried those words home like a stone in the pocket, something solid to hold on to when the night felt too long. The stars pricked the sky, their light older than memory. Anna tilted her face upward, the cool night air filling her lungs. She thought of how far she had come and how far she still had to go. Her journey was not one of grand victories or easy answers. It was one of showing up, day after day, step after step, choosing to live with quiet strength and offering it where she could. A dog barked in the distance, then fell silent. The world seemed vast and near all at once, as though the night itself leaned in to listen. Anna rested her hands in her lap, her palms open, her heart steady. She knew the ripples of her life were moving outward, carried by others, shaping lives in ways she might never see. And that was enough.